Section 6, what we need to do now. I conclude my presentation with a few thoughts on how we should proceed in the 21st century. First point I want to make is that the musicological conclusions I've summarised for you are absolutely clear. Non-vibrato singing was the norm before about 1840, with very few exceptions. We need to take this on board. As a further finding, admittedly based on a small sample, but supported by lots of anecdotal evidence, simply that today's one-size-fits-all operatic voice is, more often than not, heartily disliked by classical music fans. So why can't singers actually deliver what the market wants? Incidentally, we also need to redefine early music to include the early classical and early romantic repertoire, which for some time has been fair game for the worst sort of operatic belting. Now I have a message too for researchers and musicologists. Do explore these important full-text database resources, as indeed did some of the presenters at the York Conference. The point is they were opera mad in the 19th century. Reviewers were very important people and were given masses of space by their editors. Opera notices were numerous, lengthy, very detailed and extremely informative about musical practices at the time. Some reviews go through entire operas describing how each aria was actually sung. My third point, let's have more pop to classical crossover. Sting has shown the way with his Dowland album. He took on the classical singers at their own game and beat them hands down. Listen to Dowland's song, Softly, Softly. He sings it very softly indeed. You can actually hear the lute well balanced with the voice. The lute is usually reduced by most singers to a faint clunking in the background. So Sting, let's have more please. And Kelly Sweet and Jamie Callum, how about doing some Baroque or early classical crossover? My next comment is aimed specifically at my UK-based audience. Have you seen the annoying but very memorable Go Compare TV adverts featuring tenor Wyn Evans alias Gio Campario? He sports a fast and very wide vibrato, definitely a wobble, with twiddling moustaches to match. I've never heard a more intensely irritating voice. My 19th century reviewers will certainly be turning in their graves in disgust at 20th and 21st century wobbling. They will certainly join me in saying to GoCompare.com, do carry on with your very effective work in caricaturing the vibrato. But seriously, we do need to find some practical ways of reintroducing non-vibrato singing of the early music repertoire. In fact, I put a proposal to the University of York students in my presentation at the conference. I said that I was prepared to pay £2,000 and get a number of other people prepared to pay similar amounts to hear an authentic performance of a Rossini opera. I discussed this with them afterwards, and there was obviously some reluctance, and they pointed to the risks of upsetting audience expectations and getting typecast, which I can understand. So how do we go about it? I've got three suggestions. The first idea is prompted by the Handelian precedent I've already mentioned. Handel took extraordinary risks in introducing a non-sight reading amateur to his London audiences for his oratorios. That's Frasi. So why don't we introduce a Handel singing competition for amateurs? Perhaps we could get an individual or an institution to endow a Frasi prize. The winners will be in demand to sing solos and Handel's oratorios, which would be absolutely authentic, because that is exactly what happened to Frasi. Emma Kirkby perhaps is a precedent. She didn't study singing at a university or a conservatoire. She developed her own style and has almost single-handedly brought about a minor revolution in early music singing, although admittedly her voice is something of a compromise. My second suggestion, couldn't we get a university or a conservatoire to offer a special course in historically informed singing? Amateurs are not the solution for Baroque opera or Rossini, where I think 3 years professional training is a must, because they have to master very difficult skills of singing rapid passages, improvising cadenzas, and even mastering the cadential trill. The cadential trill is simply not within the skill set of most modern singers. Will the University of York step up to the plate? You have an excellent faculty with a broad musical culture, capable of training singers in the versatile skills needed. In fact, Anthony Rooley threw down the gauntlet, in effect, by saying, well, any professional lutenist has to master 3 or 4 different lutes, and there's all the difference in the world between the Renaissance lute and the Baroque theorbo with the set of unstopped diapason strings. Singer does the same. They have to learn to be more versatile. And Pei Chen, in fact, she showed what was possible in her examples of Lascia Più Bianca, which I presented earlier. But I think the main thing, let's organise a truly historically inspired performance of a Rossini opera, say Tancredi or Otello. We could fund it by closed user group subscription. We need to do several things: identify a troupe of talented soloists with the required skills, appoint a musical director who understands the vocal styles of the period, lay on a couple of weeks intensive rehearsal, and we need, of course, we need a few other people apart from the singers, a stage manager and scene painter. Hey presto, we're there. The last thing we want, of course, is an expensive producer who will do something attention-seeking and ridiculous, like insisting on dressing up the chorus as SS stormtroopers toting assault rifles. You may think, isn't this all too difficult? I've already mentioned the instrumental HIP precedents, which we've enjoyed since the war. But there's another, the Baroque organ revival. In 1951, I was completely bowled over by Bach's organ music. And I thought I must get myself a few records, but my financial resources were very scarce, so I invested in a couple of 78s by Fernando Germani, playing on the Westminster Cathedral organ. What a disappointment. Most of the music was played on full organ, and all one could hear was a cacophonous, confused roaring. The counterpoint was unintelligible and any phrasing undetectable. It really was a thundering monstrosity, certainly for Bach. Also, I suffered a financial injury with a needle shaking in the grooves where records very quickly wore out. But after the darkness came the light, and the light came in the form of Bach's Toccata Fugue in D minor, played by Geraint Jones on the Schnittke organ at Steinkirchen. I think it came out in 1952 or 3. I loved the incisive pedal sounds, somewhere between the crumhorn and the bassoon, the warm, clear diapasons, sparkling trebles and lovely flutes. His playing was excellent too, steadily paced, without the breakneck tempi or excessive rubato often indulged in by today's organists. In fact, Geraint Jones said, he wrote, "My devotion to these old organs has nothing to do with authenticity. It is due simply to the fact that for the first time I was able to hear what was written on the page. Listen to this disc, to the inner parts in the fugues. The lightly blown pipes sing and the textures are transparent." You can find that on the Manda Organs website. Now, the record itself was a sensation. Everybody bought it. But the whole episode was hugely controversial at the time. The musical opinion organ section was full of furious letters from cathedral organists. Real over-my-dead-body stuff. We can't have these pipsqueak antiques. Bach can only be rendered properly on the majestic 19th century 4-manual organ in my cathedral. But all was over by the shouting within 3 or 4 years. Audiences were fully persuaded by the beautiful sounds that the Baroque organ is absolutely right for Bach. So HIP won very quickly. The process was helped by the BBC Third programme. BBC producers at that time were very interested in HIP, which is of course considered impossibly elitist now. You never get discussions of anything, you just get the music played to you. It's a sort of armchair exercise. The programmes put out by the BBC Third Programme were really detailed talks, included really detailed talks by experts who took no prisoners, giving us exhaustive detail on the low wind pressures and intricacies of tracker action and so forth. There were discussions, German organ tours, and above all performances of wonderful organs. And eventually LPs and CDs came out, played by Helmut Welker and Lionel Rogge and others. Any new organs built around that time had to include full Baroque organ capabilities. Now, couldn't we do the same thing with operatic singing? I leave you with this one thought. Classical opera and concert singing in the core repertoire, say personal to Rossini, is in serious decline. It certainly won't be rescued from the deep rut it's in by our existing one-size-fits-all operatic voices. As I said before, Rossini is never performed by such singers, only vandalised. Therefore, let's do just a single, superlative, historically informed performance of a Rossini opera, and perhaps a recording. Word will quickly get around. People will say, just hear how beautiful this organ is, with these voices and sung in this wonderful style. And we can launch a genuine and very popular revival. Anyway, that's the end of my presentation, and it's been a very long one, I'm afraid, and if you got this far, that's good.